On behalf of the Global Indian Business Network, the organizers of this conference, I'd like to welcome all of you here. I realize that there is a fairly large contingent from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Thailand, and also we have from some of the organizational groups, people who have come here to listen to some of our excellent speakers. My name is George Abraham. You'll be hearing from me later. I actually had a short presentation to introduce the whole concept of the diaspora. Those of you who may not be too familiar, the diaspora refers to people of a particular ethnic origin who have left countries of origin and gone to make their home in new countries. The largest diasporas belong to the Chinese and the Indian communities, and they are scattered all over the world. And the groups that have fairly large size are the Koreans, the Japanese, the Jews, of course, and more recently the Irish and others like them. Now, they form a very interesting group of people because they have businesses that have grown in the countries of their adoption, and they have a very powerful network which can be utilized for business. And this is why in the whole concept of Global Entrepolis, which brings together entrepreneurs, felt that it would be a very good idea to have the diaspora businessmen talk about doing business with each other. So that's why this Global Diaspora Business Summit is in place. So I'd like to welcome all of you here to this summit, and I want to introduce you to the chairman of this morning's proceedings, Mr. Graham Hayward. He and I were colleagues for many years. He has a breadth and depth of knowledge of this region which very few people have, from the radio services to the private sector. And he also has the single honor of being, other than our minister mentor, recipient of the keys to London. Is that right, Graham? Yes, he was awarded the keys to London for the services that he has rendered. And he's a connoisseur of wine, and his biodata is there with you, so I shall not take up too much time. I'd like to hand over to Graham so that he can then proceed with the rest of the speakers this morning. Graham?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, George, for that introduction. Interesting that he concentrated on the wine. I'm happy about that, though, nowadays. As you will see in the little write-up, I came to Singapore in 1963 with Nestlé, on a contract which in those days was fairly common. I had a 3-year contract, and believe it or not, in those days, the expats got a 5-month holiday based on 1 month for every we worked there, another month to go back to London on the boat, and another month to come back to Singapore. It's a great life, which is why I'm still here 47 years later. I'd just like to say a few words to just highlight how different the world was, though, when I came here in '63. Singapore's population was under 3 million. Today, it's nearly 5 million. But today, of that 5 million, a third of the population are not Singaporeans. They come from all over the world, China, India, Thailand, Myanmar, still some Caucasians, but largely Asian population now. I don't know where Singapore, for example, would be, the medical community, if we didn't have Filipinos, or the restaurants for that matter. Our infrastructure could not be made the way it is if it were not from people coming from various other countries in Asia to work on those projects. The tallest building in Singapore then, in Orchard Road, was only 3 stories high. If you go down Orchard Road today, you may find that hard to believe. But it was a little block of flats called the Nian Flats, where today the Takashimaya Nian building stands. And the most revered hotel in those days was not actually the Raffles Hotel. It was a hotel called the Prince's Hotel Ghani, opposite where the Mandarin now stands. And it was a 1-story hotel, if you could believe, in Singapore. So it really was a very different world. The tallest building, incidentally, was Asia Insurance in Finlayson Green, which is still there, surrounded by much higher buildings these days. It was a different world in other ways, what I would describe as the rules of engagement between the peoples here. Firstly, I had in my contract a clause which said I had to learn the equivalent of O-level Malay within 2 years, otherwise my contract would be terminated. So when a Chinese met an Indian, or an Englishman met a Chinese, we spoke in Malay in those days. Jumped into a taxi, you spoke Malay. But thanks to Mr. Kuan Yew's policy of lingualism, we can now talk English to each other, but talk our other languages at home. The other little area which might amuse you is marriage. When I first came, the Asian families were really very reluctant to have Caucasians marrying into their families, or certainly going out with their daughters, because they to think what might happen to them when they were out on a date. And this is a true story. My friend who was in the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank wanted to marry a Chinese lady, and in 24 hours the bank transferred him to Terengganu, which in those days was about the furthest place you could go because there were 2 ferries required in order to get to Terengganu. I may be personal. My wife's, by the way, I've been married for 43 years to a lovely Peranakan Chinese lady from Taiping in Malaysia, speaker. And her sister fell in love with a British soldier because the British Army headquarters in those days was based in Taiping. And when this guy John went to see my future father-in-law and asked for her hand in marriage, the father-in-law was extremely upset about this. And the following morning, he went to see the chief officer of the army in Taiping, the British Army, said, "I'm sorry, I really do not want this man marrying my daughter." And the officer said, "Quite right, sir, I agree with you." And John was transferred within 24 hours to Singapore. Now that's absolutely true from my own family. He sat there, by the way, for 6 months, bought himself out of the army, came back, asked for a hand a second time, and this time he was accepted. Just use that as an example of, we take sometimes the modern efficiency, the big buildings, the infrastructure, the MRT, we take these things for granted in the modern world. Believe me, they've happened very quickly, and they are a sign of the way change is so important in our lives, particularly in our business lives. And that, of course, is the purpose of the conference today. Look at these changes, to look at the diaspora, which plays such an important role in those changes, as I'm sure you're only too well aware. I would now like to introduce our first speaker today, Dato' Ghazali bin Dato' Yusof from Malaysia. I've known Dato' Ghazali for some time because he used to be involved in the Chamber of Commerce movement, as I myself was. I'm not going to read all of his achievements, there are many, but I will mention that today he's the executive chairman of Nusantara Technologies, Sdn Bhd. Also a rather important role, I think, in Malaysia. He's been on the board of the Malaysian Industrial Development Authority, or MIDA, for some 20 years. With great pleasure, I invite Dato' Ghazali to address us.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. As they say in Islam, Assalamu alaikum, God be with you, and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Graham, for the very kind introduction. It's nice to be my old friends again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk to you the rebirth of the global diaspora, but before I do that, let me say a few words about, or rather, how I came to be invited here. It's because of my friendship with Johnson Paul of the National Library Board of Singapore. Thank you, Johnson, for your invitation. If you're around here, Johnson Paul. Ah, there you are. Thank you, John. I just met him only very recently, a couple of months ago. And of course, my very, very old friendship with my dear friend, Abraham here, whom I've known since my ASEAN days. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman just alluded just now to about the cultural, shall we say, integration and the makeup of this very interesting part of the world. Myself have a somewhat similar heritage or pedigree. I'm mixed. My mother is Chinese, My father is Malay. And I have lots of relatives in Singapore who are Chinese. And sometimes when I ring them up, the secretaries of my relatives will ask, who are you? Tell so-and-so that I'm his cousin. And I know your name, sir? Ghazali. So there's a silence for about 5 seconds. Then, of course, I will have to explain, and then that's it. But having said that, I think this cultural diversity has given me a lot of strength, flexibility, and adaptability. For instance, in my house in KL, 5 languages are spoken. English, so Malaysia, I speak Cantonese, I speak Hokkien. And now I've got a new nephew-in-law who is Urdu in origin, and he happens to speak excellent Malay and Hokkien. So that is the sort of atmosphere that I've been brought up. And of course, it's rather expensive. You tend to celebrate every event, every festival. I celebrate Hari Raya Aidil Fitri, Chinese New Year, because of some of the intermarriage with members of my family, with Germans, Australians, and all that. Christmas also is celebrated. There you are. So it tends to have a diaspora of its own. I'm very much grateful to the organizers for inviting me. And I'd like to speak to you about my personal experience in business. My company, Nusantara Technologies, was formed after I retired from Dunlop, Malaysia. I was in Dunlop for close to 30 years, and I resigned, or rather I retired as the number 2 company. Those days, you cannot become number 1. Still a British company then. It was Dunlop that trained me what I am today. And I owe it a lot to the British for their rather broad-minded views of what a good executive training is about. So I was posted to so many countries, this part of the world. I was general manager in Dunlop, Indonesia. I was in Hong Kong. I was also in Singapore as acting general manager. Then I was in Australia, in Sydney. I was in London as regional manager for Europe. And before I became number 2 in the company. One of the things that Dunlop had as a policy was to have a rigorous training program, continuously training the executives. Every 2 or 3 years, we are sent for an overseas course on management. I went to countless management training courses in Europe and Australia. And before you became a general manager, you did your MBA. And I was sent to Henley in England, a delightful part of England, before I became general manager. And one of the tenets and the principles of Dunlop's philosophy in delivering executives that level was simply this. I remember my big boss telling me, Sir Ray Gaddis, the late Sir Ray Gaddis, who was chairman of Dunlop in London, Zali, when we train our executives, they will be good for as long as they live. Even after you retire, you will be useful to the world. Right, he was. The second thing is, they encourage participation outside the company. So I was very active in the Chambers of Commerce. I was very active in the ASEAN Chambers of Commerce. And needless to say, as George will remember, I was host of the ASEAN meetings in the 70s and early 80s. And I formed 3 regional industry clubs in ASEAN. I was the founder chairman of the Ceramic Industry Club of ASEAN, the founder chairman together with Mr. Joe Concepcion, who's now the retired Minister of Trade and Industry of the Philippines, of the ASEAN Automotive Federation, and also the Rubber Industries Association of Southeast Asia. So that gave me what I call global appreciation, not only business, but intercultural experiences. This has proved extremely useful for me. So when I retired from Dunlop, I had a dream. I dared to dream. And that dream is the ASEAN dream. So I formed a company called Nusantara Technologies. Now Nusantara in the Sanskrit language is Southeast Asia. What do we do daily now? We are in the field of quality compliance and audit. We do a lot of inspection and testing services for the oil and gas industry. And I started this company about 22 years ago with a staff of 3. 1 engineer and 2 others. Now, almost 100 strong, 22 years down the road. And who are my partners? My partners are none other, Singapore Technologies. It's a very happy, successful relationship. It's still growing, stronger and stronger. And I'm very happy that this company is on a very positive track. And my dreams, inshallah, are slowly coming true. I've always had this vision that Southeast Asia has got tremendous potential because it is at the crossroads of so many cultures, so many historical links with countries like China, India, Middle East, for instance. And of course, where I come from, Malacca, with the Portuguese. By the way, my great-great-grandmother is Portuguese. So that sort of thing, you know. So there is that multiculturalism in us. And the Southeast Asian man, to me, is a very unique personality. And if properly galvanized and synergized, can be a world force to be reckoned with. So this is why I'm very, very optimistic about this part of the world. And that is why I'm so happy I've been invited to say a few words on my experiences. Now, when I retired from Dunlop, I was put in a few other positions. Would you believe it? Tatas of India, Telco, Mr. Mulgaonkar himself, had a company in Malaysia, an assembly plant manufacturing the Tata trucks. And because of my connections with Dunlop and my friendship with India, particularly when I was the first chairman of the Malaysia-India Joint Consultative Committee, appointed as the chairman of Tatas in Malaysia. And that was the beginning of this link with India. I've always regarded India, Malaysian eyes, maybe also in Southeast Asian eyes, as a totally underestimated country and a totally misunderstood country during those years, 70s and 80s. My biggest challenge when I was chairman of the Malaysia-India Joint Consultative Committee was to put in a much more positive light. A lot of the media reports about Indian joint ventures in Malaysia were so negative. They were failing one after another. And I was challenged by this sort of attitude and misconceptions. One of the things that I had to do was to correct. I was very fortunate in the fact that the late Mr. Mulgaonkar and I got on extremely well with each other. You won't believe it. Every time I went to Bombay House, our board meetings, 90% of the time, we were not talking about business, talking about our historical rings, the cultural dimensions of our relationship, and about religion in general, and civilizations. Because he told me, any country that neglects its history has no future. Well, up to now, I subscribe that view. That is why, in my work as a director of MIDA, looks at all the approval of foreign investments into Malaysia, I pay a lot of attention to this cultural, historical dimension. Because to me, something that we have to view a little bit more seriously. China, another mother country, as I would use the word, that we must pay attention to. I come from Malacca. My mother is Chinese. My ancestors on my mother's side all came from China because they were all traders. And I understand the attitude, their value systems, the way they operated, how important it is that we must get together into their network, all the results. And when I was in Dunlop, I was sales manager for 14 years. And you know, in the tire trade, 99% of our business were through Chinese dealers. I dare say, although I might sound a bit boastful, by the fact, it is a fact that I was the most successful sales manager Malaysia ever had, because I understand the Chinese. I understand how they think, how they operate, and most importantly, little cultural nuances which we have to respect. And that is why I formed Singapore Technologies. A lot of people, there are some sectors in Malaysia. I won't highlight which sector, you can guess. Ghazali, you can work with the Singaporean Chinese. Yeah, I find it very difficult. I said, that's where you're wrong, my friend. You know that. I find doing business clearly with Singapore Technologies one of the greatest areas of satisfaction, because they understood what it's about, it should be, how it's managed. This is something I'm most grateful to Dunlop. Come back to the earlier thing I mentioned just now, about the training I had, this great multinational, that gave me the cultural exposure, because they believed that you must learn how to manage culturally. That is why this topic on diaspora, to me, strikes me closest to the heart, because this is where we should actually build on. Now, structures that have been in place over the last 50 years have always been there, but we need to enhance it, to adapt it. And what you're doing today, I must congratulate the organizers, something most relevant and necessary. Make us re-look at our past linkages. Look at the mistakes that we have made. Correct them. Make it better and more workable. Now, how do you do this? You cannot do this just by conferences, by seminars alone. I would like to suggest we have what we call more people-to-people contact. May I go back to my experiences in ASEAN? I formed the Ceramic Industry Club of ASEAN in 1978, I still remember. The ceramic manufacturers at that time, so jealous of each other, suspicious of each other, they never even allowed factory visits amongst people in the same industry to visit them. The Singaporeans were not allowed the Thais were not allowed the Malaysians, etc. So, how did I go about forming this Ceramic Industry Club of ASEAN? When I organized seminars, we never talked about business. We talked about the opportunities outside ASEAN and how we can utilize potential market that we have, using technologies from the West to assist us. This was the pulling factor. So we had technical seminars. We never talk about marketing. We talk about technology. Each and every one of us was hungry for technology. So there were a lot of technical symposiums. And then, of course, talked, used each other, we became friendly with each other. So much so that 10 years down the road, when the club was established, everyone could visit anybody at any time. We became so close to each other. Our wives became friends with our counterparts' wives. And more often than not, we never stayed in hotels. We stayed in the homes of our friends within the industry. The people-to-people contact became so close. And because of that, we were able to function as a unit and get the best. Because the ceramic industry, in my mind, now I believe, is a very high-growth industry. Not only in the building, but there is one sector of the ceramic industry which has tremendous potential, and that is technical ceramics, insulators, IT, things that you use in your computers. They are ceramics. And this is very, very high value-added business. This is the area that the Ceramic Industry Club of ASEAN now is giving its focus on. The other area, which I had a lot of experience in, is in the automotive industry. I was president of the Automotive Federation of Malaysia for 7 years. I was the spokesman for the automotive industry. And this is where I learned from my dear friend, Mr. Mulgauka. I got inspiration from him about the automotive industry. And he told me, even up to now I can still remember, this young man, the key to a successful automotive industry lies in the component industry. After all, what is a car? A car is a summation, aggregation of component parts. If the component parts are not up to standard, the car will not be up to standard. That's the key to the quality. Is in human capital development, technical expertise, competencies and all that. Go along those lines, because that is where it all begins. That is why, now as a director of MIDA, I'm paying a lot of attention to this particular aspect. Here I must take off my hats to Thailand, because Thailand, I think, is one of the very few countries in ASEAN, maybe the first country in ASEAN that's got a Automotive Institute focusing on this. And because Malaysia has got a national car, the Proton, and of course the Perodua, the second national car, we have to look into this. I'm so happy that now they're beginning to realize that the key to it is the component industries. Where do we get the knowledge for this? Not only in the Western countries, our neighbor, India. So this is where so happy to see that now Malaysia is having a re-look at India again. I come back again to what I said earlier. Totally underestimated the Indian capability. And I hope that through this conference that we have, we'll be able to look at this seriously. May I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that maybe the time has come for us just not to talk about this diaspora in general terms. Let us give it focus. Let us look at issues pertaining to technical development, technical issues, human capital development in specific areas that we want to give priority to. One of the areas, of course, is in the areas of engineering, ICT, and maybe later on down the road, environmental management. I'm the honorary executive director for the Business Council Sustainable Development in Malaysia. I started this after the Rio Summit in 1992 because I realized that sooner or later, environmental issues will come to the fore in all our industrialization strategies. I'm happy to report at this meeting that MIDA, the Malaysian Industrial Development Authority, will now incorporate amongst its approval systems the dimension of sustainable development, which means technology, which is sustainable, environmentally sound. This is a huge field. We are looking at issues connected to waste management, energy diversification, product design. You can see, immense, terrific. It opens up a new vista, a new horizon of opportunities. And why can't we all together, the Asian countries, get together? Because our environmental situation is similar. We understand our environment better than the others. We have built the competency. Why don't we use that? I would suggest perhaps we have technical meetings giving focus on these issues. China is going to have a lot of problems on the environment. Maybe we can do something together with them. So this is the sort of horizon that we have. You see, my dear friends, George and I have been on this ASEAN circuit for many, many years. We've had challenges after challenges, a lot of institutional, we say, obstruction to get it moving. But the important thing is that we are willing to learn, forgive and forget, to adapt ourselves to situations. We have what they call the capacity to sustain our dreams and visions are. Everything's in place. If you look at what's happening now in Singapore, APEC, strengthening the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. Asia is giving a lot of support to this particular aspect. We have a special division called Small and Medium Industries Development Corporation, of which I'm indirectly involved. You can see everything is going that way. You can see no reason why we cannot jump into this bandwagon and make things move. We are the agents of change. So I would like to take this opportunity once again to congratulate all of you for being here. Now, the terminology. Why has my talk been called Rebirth? I sat down, thought about this, and I come to the conclusion that the mother countries, India, China, and the Middle East, have undergone spectacular changes. We too, the recipient countries, have undergone spectacular changes. I strongly feel that we need to develop win-win situation. The potentials, because of our cultural commonalities, latent, as it may be, not been utilized in a proper way. And I commend the organizers for making this initiative at today's conference. All I can say is, at this juncture, Mr. Chairman, I consider this meeting today as a very historic landmark meeting. You know why? Because we have finally history, economics, and the realization of our commonalities to action in one unified body. And consider the rebirth of the global diaspora, which is what we are here this morning to discuss in my paper, will be able to see not just a rebirth, but a continual series of births emanating out of this, each serving its own needs, but really contributing towards making this region come. So, I have always believed, whenever I travel in this region, I used to quote this very famous saying by my good friend Fred Elizalde from the Philippines in his book called The ASEAN Dawn. Whenever I travel the ASEAN countries, Fred used to mention his book. I found myself and my home in everyone in those countries. There is that cultural similarity. Let's use that. So, my message and my advice, if you might use the word, is let's get on with it. Get our act together. We have a lot of things going on over here, brothers and sisters. 67 years old, being involved in the ASEAN circuit since I was 24 years old. Been through ups and downs. Now joint venture with Singapore. I still sustain and maintain the belief and the value system. This diaspora that is around us, positive force. Let's get back. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I understand from George Abraham that there will be questions after each speaker's presentation. Is that correct? So could I ask you to please take a seat? There's a microphone there which I hope is working. And we have some comments or questions. It doesn't have to be a question. Please feel free to comment as well from the audience. Who would like to start? While you're thinking up your questions, could I put one to you? You mentioned the discussion of specific problem and issues that should be addressed.
Yes.
What would be your recommendation for appropriate way for this to be done in let's say, the Southeast Asian context and the diaspora that's covered by that area?
Okay. We have what we call the ASEAN Chambers of Commerce Industry. Salam is here, whom I met. They've got the structures in place. We have, of course, respective promotion boards for industries to come into Malaysia or Singapore, EDB in Singapore, MIDA in Malaysia, BKPM in Indonesia. We have an ASEAN section that gives focus not only on ASEAN, it is on regional cooperation. To work through that, through the industry associations existing in the country. For instance, if we have automotive, rubber, whatever it is, get them involved, and then we prioritize and form what I would call a business agenda. A business agenda. Let the private sector take the lead. Don't, sorry to say if there are any people from the foreign affairs, let not politics come into this. Let the business people take the lead and then work on business. Because that to me is of paramount importance. Because if ever there was any fault in ASEAN, I'm using the word fault in a very general term, it's because sometimes the government tends to take the upper hand. Not side countries, but some countries, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs become too overbearing. I think the private sector must call the shots. It must be a private sector initiative and a private sector operation. Right. It's along those lines.
Thank you, Data. Any questions now? Yes, one gentleman here, please. There's the microphone. Give your name and company or organization.
Thank you. My name is Vikas Kumar. I just moved from US to here for a job in Dacheng Asset Management, which is a part of Deutsche Bank.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you is, last week at Harvard seminar where I graduated from, the Farid Zakaria, who is the Newsweek editor, he was giving a conference, and I asked him, how do you see the Asia going forward, like NAFTA, the North America Trade Association, or European Union per se? His reply to me was, there's nothing called Asian economy. The Asian countries kind of hate each other. If India is growing, they can't see China growing. It's never going to happen that India, China, or Singapore are going to do together where they're going to have some structure like European Union. Do you see going forward, because we have so much similarity on a culture basis and things are opening up through Asian kind of structure, is this going to go forward in 10 years, 20 years? What is your take on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very excellent question. I was involved in a seminar about 20 years ago. It was not a seminar. It was 10 days. We were locked up at KL Hilton. I remember that time. And one of the ministers was the chairman of this seminar called ASEAN, the Way Forward. And one of the things that we in the private sector put forward rather strongly, empathically, that one of the reasons why ASEAN has succeeded is because although it is culturally inspired, it is business motivated, and the engine that drives it is internationalization. We must never allow compartments to develop. I think that cultural dimension only the foundation and the history, as I mentioned. But the engine, the drive forward must come on the business side. And that is why, at that time, I remember, even now, I subscribe to the opinion that let's not hurry too much on the European Union or the EEC model. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to mention the chairman. For 5 years, I was chairman of the ASEAN EEC Business Council. And I used to chair these very, very difficult meetings in Brussels. We talk about patents and copyrights, and on a few occasions, a few delegates walked out, etc., etc. So you can see how difficult it is when you allow things to develop, institutionalize things early, allow it to evolve. Our founding fathers of ASEAN had a simple idea to explore opportunities to cooperate with one another, but not to put force into it. It must be out of its own volition, at its own pace. Now that is the strength of ASEAN. The Europeans regard this as a weakness. I don't think so. I think this is the strength. Because, let's face it, the ASEAN countries are all post-World War II creations. And they all have their own national agenda. Singapore is different from Malaysia, Malaysia is different from Philippines, Philippines is different from Myanmar. Let's be realistic about it. Don't force it. The important thing is the awareness, the desire to continue talking and working with each other. And of course, it will take a bit of time because of this rather unique situation. So you're right, my friend. What you've heard from your talks in the US, I don't foresee ASEAN going that way. Because if it goes that way too quickly, ASEAN will not function as effectively as it is now. Because we have our own way of doing this. This is our culture. We have a way of doing this. This is our strength.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from the audience? Oh yes, please come to the microphone.
My name is Arthur Ngiam from Globe Precision Products. I subscribe to your statement that it is very important to have a historical and cultural dimension and your statement that any country that neglects its history has no future. That reminded me of an event that I watched a month ago when China celebrated its 60th anniversary. And the Chinese marched 169 steps. And at that moment, I thought 169, any numerologists with neurology, all add up together become an occult number of 70. But actually, then I realized that 2009 subtract 1840 is exactly 169. 1840 was a year the British defeated China in the Opium War. So it means that China is aware of its history and humiliation. So I stand to be corrected if there's any mainland Chinese here who thinks that what I think of is correct regarding China. Thank you.
Thank you for the observation and interjection. I never thought about it that way. But I always believe the Chinese, coming back again to my dealings with the Chinese, they are somehow rather very, very concerned about origin, cultural pride. I know this because my mother is Chinese. And it's so, we must respect this. And this is where I think we are unique in this part of the world. We understand. Just another thing which I've mentioned, Mr. Chairman, in Malaysia, appointed by the Prime Minister, panel of national unity. We are looking very closely at this of national unity in Malaysia at the moment. And I've always stressed this point, that we need to be more understanding and respect each other's religion. And I dare say that I'm very proud of this. I am advisor to the Missionary Society, the Malaysian Christian Federation, the Hindu Sangha Group, the Baha'is invite me as a guest of honor. Of course, my own religion, Islam. The Malaysian Christian Federation, I just chaired a meeting last week about ethics and morality. Now, all this can happen only to a country and a region of the world that understands this. Let's use it. Let us not throw it away. We have a fantastic thing in our hand, ladies and gentlemen. Throw it away. Keep on reminding my political friends in Malaysia, this is our strength. If you would throw it away, God, you're throwing away something which is God-given. Our diversity Let us celebrate our diversity. That is our source of strength. Depends on attitude, our values.
I think perhaps one more question. We have one gentleman over here.
Thank you very much, Chairman. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished speakers. My name is Dr. Sivamurthy, Advisor to Malaysian Indian Business Association. Thank you. Speaker is a Malaysian. I'd like to raise this particular issue in the context of Malaysia. Now, I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, you would have heard about BRIC, B-R-I-C, Brazil, Russia, India, China, as one of the strongest and emerging markets that can be seen in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, we will not use America or Europe in terms of reference from the perspective of economic growth. These are the countries that we are looking forward to. Now, Malaysia, which is diversity of races, now it becomes a major economic strength in terms of tapping the Chinese market, which is a low-cost production, in the mass market. We have a strong Chinese population in Malaysia. The Indian market can be tapped. There's an Indian population with a strong service sector. Now India can tap the mass market plus the technology. And the Muslim market too, we have a big mass market in Indonesia and the Middle East in terms of halal market. Now, I want to see, what is your comment? Is the Malaysian technocrats and the economic advisors tapping these strengths in terms of the diversity of races to tap into this market? Now, Malaysia enjoys a tremendous age because we've got 3 major communities, and this quite unlike the other countries in Asia. Now, how much have we tapped this strength as a pillar of economic strength as far as Malaysia is concerned? Thank you.
Question. Action speaks louder than words. I'm afraid a lot of the, wait, this is my personal view, governmental view. This is not my director speaking. This is my personal view. Action speaks louder than words. Sometimes with only action. This is our problem in Malaysia. I think under this new leadership, starting from Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, now Najib, we are given more space to speak our minds. Or rather, I sense that. I think majority of Malaysians who believe in what you said just now. We have the strength, we have together, and we have to think independently. A majority is there, but they have not been able, or rather they do not wish to see doing it. Now, with this increasing space, we're slowly beginning to see much more openness, honesty. My new chairman of Country, Dr. Sulaiman Mabo, took over about a month ago. He was the founding Director General of the Malaysian Institute of Integrity. And in fact, when the institute was launched, Mr. Mentor Lee Kuan Yew was one of the guest speakers. And I enjoyed that whole day looking at this issue. He said that, Ghazali, sometimes we Malaysians forget that integrity does not mean only integrity to everybody else. We have our own integrity to ourselves. Because when we have integrity to ourselves, we have integrity to the God Almighty. In other words, don't be a hypocrite. You have to say, feel what you think, and just don't say. Do something about it. It's also integrity. So I suddenly realized the new situation now becoming more open, much more positive. And dare say that the changes that is going to come, Malaysian scene is going to be one of openness, sincerity, integrity at its truest point. I say this with some conviction, simply because I'm very much involved in human values. It is strange, as I developed over the years and I become an old man, an older person, I suddenly see the link between humanity, civilization, and economic development. I suddenly realized all this is governed by one simple point, and that is the value system. I'm so much involved now with a movement called the Organization for the Promotion of Human Values. This is the key point. If you develop too much towards materialism without the balance, I think you're going to go wide on the road. You'll tend to lose your sense of perspective as to what progress really is. That's why sustainable development to me, being a founding member of that, is a very important consideration. Because when you do that, you see the other side of progress.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Dato. You, I think, have given us a very stimulating presentation to kick off the conference. You emphasized the importance of experience and that you utilize the mutual understanding and cultural connections that exist within the diaspora of regions. You also emphasized the importance of technical discussions, with reference particularly, you mentioned the automotive industry, but obviously this applies to IT and other areas as well. And you suggested that we should get together as groups and hold discussions on specific problems, issues, and you made a suggestion on how this could be done. You used the word that we are, or could be, or should be, agents of change. I think that's very important myself. And we should work with the commonalities that we have as a region, with the cultural similarities that we have. Somebody like myself, who came here completely the wrong color, feels he has a commonality with my Asian friends. Perhaps that's why I was to chair the meeting today. But I do think you can genuinely adopt other people's cultures without necessarily sacrificing your own values as well. I think that's essential. And as you correctly said, any country neglects its history, has no future. That's very important, particularly when it's linked to the human values that you mentioned at the end. So Dato, thank you very much indeed. Join with me, ladies and gentlemen. It's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Michael Ma as our next speaker. I don't have the pleasure of knowing him prior to this session today, as I did with our first speaker. I have certainly eaten in Indochine range of restaurants, so I have at least that connection with Mr. Ma. You've seen from the write-up, he is the group CEO of that well-known chain of restaurants, which also nowadays includes clubs, hotels and resorts. He's also a council member of the Singapore Tourism Board, and he has been recently named the Tourism Entrepreneur of the Year at the Singapore Tourism Awards 2006. He also received several other awards in that area. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Michael Ma.
Good morning. I was asked just last week to give a quick spiel on the story of Indochine's about. Just a bit about my background, since this is about Diaspora. A Chinese Laotian Jew, third generation Jew, actually born in Laos. My father's born in Thailand, and he grew up in Thailand as refugee to Australia. Then I immigrated here to Singapore back in '93, and I have a Swedish wife, so all over the place. And in many ways, I'm East and West, and I'll just quickly run down what's the whole story of, we have a very busy schedule this week, especially the Indochine 10th anniversary. And also, we have the rock concert coming up this coming Friday. Of course, this is a good chance for me to publicize our event, the Indochine Festival, as you could see there. There's a rock concert with APEC CEO Summit, and also the Tropical Fiesta Night. It's basically, we are the venue for the after party for APEC CEO Summit. So there'll be a lot of drunken CEOs hanging out, and that's the best way to do deals with them. I know. We run the bars. Okay, establishing Indochine Group, my background, I'm an economist. I worked for Wilmar Trading as a junior trader. That's what my title said, but I was making coffee, photocopying machines and stuff like that. Hang on, this is going way too fast. So I worked for Kun Hong, Wilmar Trading, in my first few years as a trader. And I was partying all the time because as a trader, I was dealing with European time, then the US time. So that's what got me into the nightlife, but I was out since I was 14 years old anyway. That's what I got really good at, clubbing and partying. So doing that, that's why I bought the first property in Club Street. And these are some of our properties, as you can see, in Clarke Quay, Mountain Butterfly, the Asian Civilization Museum. That's the one in Waterfront. This is the one that's dining room we have, the States room. It's just going out of control. It's moving by itself. Anyway, our Club Street, our first venue. So our business is all about, it's at Orchard Road, Wisma Atria. Our business is about bar, restaurant, nightclubs, cafe. We're the only one that's gone, we did all this and gone into hotels as well. Very few companies will stick to, sorry, it's moving by itself. Can you stop it? It's like really, I didn't do anything. Sorry. So anyway, I know I don't want to Robert Yup's time because he's a very busy guy. Anyway, so we have explored everything. Our business expanded to, we're in Germany, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia recently. We're in India, New Delhi. And there's a few things that I would like to go and no-go zone in our business because I think it's pretty easy to go to do business just anywhere, but in fact, it's quite tricky to navigate certain territories like India. You all know India is pretty tough with investment sort of money coming in. Germany was easier. Thailand is a bit tricky. Asia was dodgy sometimes. You know, all my jurisdiction is always like, hang on, you got to deal with the cops. Our business is not just strictly sending the money in and then you registered your shares and that. It's a lot more to it than that because you're in a restaurant, bar, and nightclub. Nightclub is always dodgy, yeah? Yet, you know, certain territories you have, you know, mafias, gangsters, and all these things, rough guys, you know, they try to extort money off you. Because you come from Singapore, which is relatively clean, it's a very good place for business. Once you do business here, then you explore, you know, it's like I'm going in the wilderness. I have a special friend from Sweden, Johan. Johan, he's a different type of explorer. The gentleman in the white, he's the guy that gets out in the wilderness. He has done 28 expeditions, North Pole, South Pole, Equator, highest mountain, Mount Everest, you name it. He's a different type of guy of what we're doing. What we're doing here is that I'm exploring different territory for business. This guy is exploring different virgin territory that no man has been, you know. And that's why I thought I'll bring him here today to let him explore a different type of summit. I'll just fly through it. A lot of you guys haven't been to Singapore before. Indochine is 10 years old. Obviously, we've done a lot in the last 10 years. And some of the stories of our building our restaurants, it's always about the uniqueness, about the design. When people ask me, why are you going to this bar restaurant business if you've got no idea, never worked in one, never had any experience in one, you know, these are sort of things that I had a feel for, you know, and to venture out to different territories, it is because I like the place, like Jakarta. This is our biggest one in Jakarta right now. We just completed it. It's 40,000 square feet. We have 6 businesses there. Jakarta is a different territory again, and we have a very good partners. That's why we dared to go and open wider and bigger one there. It's an amazing place, Jakarta. That's the other part of Indochine in Jakarta. As you can see, took the whole entire 8th floor of FX in Sudirman Road. It was just completed a few months ago. Some of the, you see, they say the Chinese and the Indians are great businessmen. They're all over the place, yeah, in this whole country. There's a lot of business people I met from especially Chinese origin, Indian origin. It's networking, they all come back to, and I meet a lot of them in restaurants and bars. You would not believe, in restaurant is probably the most interesting business, but it's not great for money spinner, as you got really booming. Meet all sorts of people, the age group, every business. And, after a few alcohol, drinking, relaxing, surprisingly, what I've learned from other people's business, and we became a great networker of business. I meet all sorts of interesting people, and this is what I like about this bar and restaurant. This is still in Jakarta. All the views you see is different venue because we accommodate everybody. We have the club right here with the sand and the acrylic swimming pool on the rooftop. Yeah, it's the first time they've ever done a beach club on the roof with sand and acrylic swimming pool. We have all sorts of people, young, old, musician, explorer. Yeah, this is another part of it. It's 40,000 square feet. That's why my staff keep putting the same photos. Anyway, that's our Mont Kira business in Malaysia. Again, we always love interesting designs. Malaysia has a lot of problem, especially with the alcohol movement, and the police is always trying to bust us for entertainment license and all that. There's always trying to find a way for some way to squeeze you. It's our Germany restaurant. We opened that 7 years ago. Again, we have an ice bar in there and a cool club. And then this is our resort in Phuket. The whole mountain is the whole resort. We have 26 villas with swimming pool. All of them are like that. Phase one. Thailand, whole sets of strange regulations and all sorts of new things that you never know. But that's our resort. We sold a lot of them off the plan. We have a mixed-use development, 26 villas like this, 2 to 6 bedrooms, to studio apartments, condominiums. So we became a developer, become hotel management. The view we've got here is the best view in Phuket. It is the best. That's why we bought it without full due diligence. And then we found booby surprise later on. And then, luckily we have certain clauses that sign up, so we were protected on that. But it's a beautiful resort, and the price has gone up spectacularly. Phuket is one of the most amazing places you ever see, despite the military coup, the boom-bust cycle, the tsunami, the Asian crisis, the SARS flu. Phuket's still going up. Bangkok just went like this. The rest of Thailand went south. Phuket went up. This is no joke. We explored Dubai, DIFC. That's where we meant to partner with them, with Dubai International Financial Center. But they got alcohol problems. Despite DIFC's state-owned, they still have, alcohol issues. So we can't open a restaurant and bar without alcohol license. So, this year my staff slotted in the Indochine Festival, the IUCN. This is Dr. Ashok Khosla. He's the environmentalist. We are pushing our Green Festival this year in a big way. We had Piece of Art by Dr. Sun Yu Lee. Fabulous thing, art exhibition with Amazonia. This picture, how ironic it is, kid going underwater as global warming. The water are rising. And this is our previous speaker, Dato, he was talking about sustainability. This is what we're doing. We've been green for the last 10 years, and it is our statement. We do shark fin soup, bluefin tuna, yellowfin tuna, no caviar, no sturgeon. Our heat water system is heat exchange. Today we have a Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy talking about nature is changing, pushing our Copenhagen agenda very strong. And these are the IUCN people that will be speaking today at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. This Dr. Singh is a Nobel Prize winner. Part of the team that won the Nobel Prize with Al Gore back in '97 on climate change. And I'm sorry, I'm skipping all over the place because I haven't seen this slide. My staff did this, so it's skipping all over the place. So tonight, so this coming week, we have all these performances. That's tomorrow night, and then we have the peace concert. All brought all sorts of performers from all over the world, and they're all environmentalists. And it's supposed to be working in conjunction with APEC CEO Summit. So all our partners and sponsors, our American Express friend sitting there, Peter Kapoor. Honestly, this thing is out of control. This is our past year Indochine Festival. Indochine is we're doing something. We're not just a restaurant and a bar. We do bigger events. We do interesting events. Trying to put on something that nobody else has done in Asia. You know, we're not just a restaurant. When we put on a festival, it's about days last year. This year's 20 days. Sailing tournaments, golf tournament, polo tournaments. We have rock concerts. We have cooking show. We have sustainable development. That was last year with a whole host of things, serious things. This year we got SIIA involved. We got Howard Shaw from the chairman of Green Group. I forgot what's his organization called. It's about art. It's about golf. Essentially, our business is about business people, networking, having fun in a relaxed environment. We're trying to be the networker for companies to chill out and just hang on to connect. Last year we had our guest of honor was Francis Yo, YTL's chairman, also Ace of Base as a performer in Sweden, and they were fantastic. I don't know if you remember Ace of Base, but there was a great rock band. It's rather disturbing, sorry about that, my apologies. So what we're doing with IUCN is that on your table, you get a copy of this. Please have a look at it. And this is the whole thing about what Indochine does. Our philosophy, not just a restaurant or bar, it's about lifestyle, about business connection, and a lot of people, travel to Germany and said, Mike, do you have some friends in Germany can I connect with in Hamburg? In a way, we are introducing friends to friends in different business, and it's not our task to do the deal. And we also connect environmentalists like IUCN, wider business environment. Essentially what IUCN means is the International Union of Conservation of Nature. Scientists, environmentalists, they're out in the field. They're not in the cities. We are the bridging gap for IUCN. IUCN is the only group in the world that has a seat in the United Nations Assembly. And Dr. Ashok Khosla became the president of this. So for all your businesses out here, I urge you to think about green, to think about sustainability, and that's the way of the future. More and more young consumers are asking, is your company green? Are you socially responsible? Are you concerned about the future, about our future kids? Because that means a lot for companies. It's not the same thing as, you grow your business and purposely ruin the environment, because you will be held accountable for this, and at a later date. Australia, I saw this movement in the 70s and 80s. I've been a greenie for 30 years. A lot of these things are coming back by the council, looking for developers, dump some chemical on certain land, and they had to pay to clean it up. These are the costs, social hidden costs will catch up with you, because these trace element will be backtraced. And I urge businesses to think about this green issue, sustainability, that's the sort of things. So IUCN, my wife became the special ambassador for IUCN because and I'm talking about trillions of dollars of business in the green movement. And there's a lot of opportunities for that sort of space. You'll be surprised, the teenagers, the 20-something years old, they are so green these days. The people in our generation are not, especially with the Singapore government. What I've read recently, it's amazing Singapore could have taken this leadership and become the most green country in Asia Pacific. Not. There's a big business opportunity in this sector. People are not realizing that. So what we do for this, Indochine, is connecting, and our campaign is push for Copenhagen. It's not Copenhagen, it's Copenhagen. We have a big Series 2 of the IUCN's party in Copenhagen. And our campaign, please register with Copenhagen and you sign the signatory. It's the most amazing thing that you learn about climate change and what's happening. Despite, there's a journalist that recently written up about, climate change. Is it happening? Is it by nature? Sure, it can be. My point is, it doesn't. Our action is too much of a higher price to pay. By spending 1 or 2% of our GNP right now, it will easily give us 30, 35 to 40% of the GNP later. The catastrophe mostly will be in Asia with rising sea level and all that sort of stuff. Further, a lot of species that need to be saved. You can't annihilate the whole shark fin, the tigers, Siberian tigers, the orangutan. All these species had to be saved. It's largely, a lot of it is due to overpopulations, really. Anyway, without further ado, I'll close my remark on that note. A lot of literature about Indochine, and where we have grown from one small outlet to 35 days in Asia Pacific, and our desires to become a global brand for Asian high-end product, because nobody's really occupying that space. We have a lot of French people, like the Buddha Bar, the ASEAN concept, some of the American concept, doing Asian. Asia is really in. This is why a lot of imitations want to be Asian concept, and nobody's really looking at it, and we're the only one doing that. And I tell you, it's an advantage for us to be in Singapore to do this business overall. We can speak English, because the Japanese, the Korean, the Thai, the Indonesian, couldn't speak English properly. They cannot communicate with a language. English is the first one. English common law in Singapore is fantastic. A lot more people love to do business with Singapore because of that. Because my business in India is already gone down. It's terrible, and it's not because of the business. It's because of our partner who refused to give us our shares. And there's so many tricky with this. We thought done everything right, but according to the the Reserve Bank of India, any money coming in India, you have to register the share, and these guys refuse to give, because in India, you don't have to give the share, and you've got to take them to court, and it will take centuries, decades to go through. But anyway, despite that, a few milestones to watch out for in Asia Pacific. Overall, the business for us, a very fantastic business. We enjoy it, we love it. We get a few hiccups here and there. I'm not claiming that our business is a perfect model. We're learning. It's an adventure that I'm going through right now, 42, and I look forward for another 10 years of exciting partying and summit to climb. So without further ado, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that presentation, Michael. You just pointed out to me that we're running a bit behind schedule, and if you're going to get any lunch, and it won't be in Indochine, unfortunately, we had better restrict the question time. I'd like to suggest, if you're going to stay on, Michael, that we wait until the other two speakers have made their presentations, and then we have like a question session. Is that okay with you? You have to go, do you? Okay, well, can we just have one key question then? Okay. Can you hear at the back? No, he can't hear. George, you should know that.
Sorry, Michael, before you go, I think we need to hear. You've gone from Laos to Australia. Then you've come to Singapore, and from Singapore you've gone all the way to Germany, and I believe you're going to Dubai soon. How did you embark on this adventure of yours?
Well, as a commodity trader, you know, I've learned a lot about Europe, Asia, US, and for us, Singapore is too small just to have, just a few. In Singapore, we have 15 outlets overall, but we're saturated. We are forced, in a way, we have to expand abroad. It's so tiny. I mean, Middle East is a very interesting territory for us because Abu Dhabi, Qatar, get all sorts of proposals. I like going there. It's good to stop over, especially the Middle East, before we get to Europe. I would stay out of Europe for the time being. That was a mistake I did back 8 years ago when we expanded to Hamburg. And the reason was, I looked at the unification of Europe when the Berlin Wall came down. Gerhard Schroeder just about to come into from the Chancellor, the new blue-eyed boy for the press, and it was fantastic. And I thought Germany would be a great growth zone next, especially unification of European or the Eastern Europe. Huge amount of business. Unfortunately, that's not meant to be. So Europe is no-go zone because you will get killed. Taxes, labor, union. Although we're making a bit of business money, but it's a struggle. And Europe has to change its policy big time in order to maintain its position and even catch up with the rest of Asia. So I've spoken to the German of Commerce, and they have a hard time reorganizing their tax structures. I mean, for me, doing this business across the board like that, I've got to see what the US is like, what the Europeans are like, what the Asians are doing, and which sector, and what the Australians are doing, And Asia is the best place by far to do business, and the potential here is unbelievable. So that's why I would restrict the growth in Europe for now. Dubai, Middle East, yes. US, no. Real estate is coming very cheap. The US dollars are down as well. A good possibility because the pound is so low. Real estate became, it's crashed. So these are the opportunities that I foresee. Other than that, my main focus is in Asia, still. Yes, sir. George.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Quick, grab the microphone.
I'm Austin Moraes from Asian Channels. And I was quite interested in your comment there that you are into nutraceutical cuisine, but there's nothing there. And that seems exciting, so can you speak?
Okay. As you can see, my slide was dancing on its own. Nutraceutical cuisine is essentially nutraceutical food with nutraceutical is nutrition with pharmaceutical effects. Yeah? Essentially, we believe in prevention rather than cure. So if you eat well, you maintain your full balance of amino acid diet, that is a prevention. In Asian food, it's a natural thing already. In Laotian, Vietnam, Cambodia, especially out of the Mekong Basin, the river is full of nutrients. So every type of vegetable food can grow on the Mekong Basin coming down from the Himalayas. So Laos and Vietnam has a lot of these natural food already. So it's coming back to Chinese traditional medicines and things like that. So that's what nutraceutical food is about. And Indochine has been very strong on this for the last 10 years. Yes, we do have vegetarians as well. A lot of people perceive that, chicken, fish, and meat, we got one section. We do have a vegetarian food because Buddhism has Jai. Jai food all came from India, Hindu tradition anyway. So that's what our focus is on. Minimum cooking, maximum nutrition with pharmaceutical effects. That's what our nutraceutical terms is. And we didn't show the slide because it was there, but I don't know what happened to it. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I think you gave us a presentation which covered some very interesting areas if you're in the diaspora trying to invest in countries in the region. You touched on, and I love this, I would love to sit down and talk to you about this, dodgy mafia and gangsters you were talking about. We could have a good presentation on that. You also mentioned the Malaysian anti-alcohol problem, which clearly for you is a difficulty, and the Indian share problem. So this makes us more aware that there are things out there which the diaspora has to tackle, not necessarily in the guidebook to doing good business, I would say, particularly the dodgy mafia. So thank you very much indeed for an interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Robert Yap, who's the chairman and CEO of the YCH Group, Singapore's leading end-to-end supply chain company. He's also involved in various other things, as you've seen from the sheet, including being a founding member of the India-Singapore CEO Forum and co-chairman of the Korea-Singapore Logistics Council. So, Robert, I look forward to your presentation. Mr. Robert Yap.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I was asked to speak at this forum. I think the title excites me, but I didn't know what it meant. Diaspora experience. And after understanding what the organizer was trying to put together, I felt that this is a very compelling forum for me to be speaking to all of you. I'd like to really share basically in terms of the journey that I've taken, especially during the last 30 years. I'm much older than you, Michael. But I must say, my initial thing about this business that I'm in was, I mean, it's a family business that I more or less got pushed into, yeah. So it's not something that I like to do, but at the end of the day, it ended up something that I started to be passionate about and really enjoyed what I'm doing and still very much doing it today. I thought that just to give you a very short intro of what we do, we are actually end-to-end supply chain player in the Asia-Pacific region. We run, for example, supply chain procurement for companies like Dell Computers. So if you buy a Dell computer, we support the manufacturing part of it. We take the product when it's done, we take it out, we call you, and then we bring it to your home. Right, so this is a kind of a end-to-end supply chain thing that we do. Of course, we're not just focused in IT high-tech, we also run chemical, pharmaceutical supply chain, we run the consumer business. For example, in Indonesia today, we run the entire dairy product. Number one in dairy for Indonesia, the Susu Mendara or the Dutch Lady brand. So these are the kind of a business that we are in. Very, very challenging, very, very tough business, but huge opportunity, right? Because of the way that Asia is opening up today. So I think that's a kind of a setting for us. Our differentiator is something of a thing that we actually created mainly just to be different, right? And we are a Singapore homegrown company. Singapore being Singapore, we attract all the global players. Singapore is a place where it's very open, right? We bring in foreign companies, the best among the best in the world, and Singapore as a stepping stone for the rest of the Asia region. So in order to compete, we need to be different. Right? How to be different is really try to create paradigm shifting, right? Solutions that we can actually take it forward. Be a different of the equation, the multinational clients that we operate. Today, with the footprints that we have across Asia Pacific, that adds a huge differentiator. And also by being the region, right, playing in places like China, in India, in ASEAN, give us a very strong definite advantage because we have suffered, we have gone in, we have learned, like what Michael has done, of course, in many different experiences, but in the process we become much more experienced, right, in terms of in this field. That has given us a huge advantage. So 7PL in fact is what we call 4+3, right? 3PL is third-party logistics, 4PL is more the consulting bit. We do 7, both the consulting, solutioning, as well as implementation as a 3PL. So there's a big differentiator. And because we have our operations span across Asia Pac, we actually provide what we call a pan-Asian kind of a solution when we actually do for things like Dell, Motorola, and so on. Our base is really more in Asia Pacific. I think Asia Pac, many years ago, I think 10, 15 years ago, we also make a foray into Europe. We were in Scotland, we were in Hungary. We also make forays into Americas. We were in Mexico, Guadalajara, also Brazil. But when the high-tech sector actually took a turn in the early 2000s, we decided then to focus ourselves and then stick on to Asia. Fortunately, it became a right strategy for us because today we are all over Asia Pac. And this recession, no doubt, is also bad for everybody, but relatively speaking, we are better off than many of our competition, and in fact, we are still growing, right? Because of the countries like China, India, which I'll go into certain details later on, are really still spinning, right, in terms of their economic wheel. Right? Okay, this is the growth engines of the world. We see our market today as China is about 1/3 of our business, and then we see India. We have only been in India for 3 years, but today we hit over India. We have 50 cities that we use as cross-docking points to the rest of Indian consumer market. So this is a very interesting development. We went very fast growth in India, which we took much longer in China. So I don't know whether it's the India being an easier place. I don't think so. It's just that maybe we have learned, we are smarter, we didn't make a lot of mistakes through experience and so on, right? I just take China as it is. I mean, China, if you see China as what it is, China is fantastic as an area. I have a huge pleasant experience in China. I mean, the first 5 years that we entered China was, of course, not really for our kind of business, mainly because flourish on a lot of the gray channel, right? Because you could do logistics supply chain very well. You're buying some 5-10% saving, move it faster to market. But not necessarily you can move faster to market because the gray channel are even more effective, right? They move very much faster, cheaper, and that is not our game. So we were waiting for the market to change. So when the market started to change in the late 90s, we realized that this is a fantastic market. And we started to grow for the last 10 years. We've been growing very, very fast in China. Today we are actually all over China itself. I find the government there very business. I mean, they do make things happen. Today, I think if you look at China, they are actually providing the of growth to the rest of the world. I mean, we are talking about decoupling, something that even our MM mentioned before the crisis. But after the crisis happened, I think everybody said there's no decoupling. And I don't see, but I do see some form of decoupling. The total decoupling, but there is, right? And the China consumption engine are actually moving very, very strongly. Right? And the consumption engine will continue to grow. We entered China based on production, supply chain management, supporting them to be the factory of the world. Today, in the last 2 years, we have actually pushed very strongly into consumption market. We go into second-tier cities like Chengdu, right? Where we set up cold chain facilities, which we dub as the city supply chain, where we partner the entire city in terms of bringing food, safety, hygiene to the equation, right? So we are ensuring basically as the cities start to grow, the second-tier city, the third-tier cities, they are assured of a sustainable, right, supply chain, sustainable continuous supply of food, right, pharmaceutical, medicine, and so on into their consumers. I think this is we're trying to do as part also of our CSR program to be able to help cities to grow in a sustainable manner. So I've actually jumped the gun on this. I think this is what we are doing. I think in Chengdu, this is a basic project that we are in. We are intending to put in at least 1 or 2 cities a year, right? So the is being built today, and we are launching that movement. First quarter, Chengdu City Supply Chain Hub will be up and running. About close to 700,000 square feet of facilities with 400 to 500 trucks distribution and 24 hours into the city. We come to India. What's the different experience in India? So I say, see quite a lot of our Indian friends here. So maybe I just like to tell you my experience when many years ago, my friend visited India and told me a story about India. He says, I go to India, I say, my God, India is a tough place. So nobody, we have people like that coming to tell you, that's why nobody wants to go to India. I have a hard time trying to get my executive to say, hey, let's go to India. But I said, no, can we avoid India and go somewhere else? So the story is that I had this friend, this actually go around spreading through, is that India is a very hot place, right? So you have this problem with conditioning, with weather. And you go to, those days in India, you go to stay in one of the hotel, I don't know how many star hotel, maybe one, maybe none. There is no aircon and no fan, right? No fan at all. So what do? You have to go and grab a fan just to keep yourself cool. You go down to this hotel, typically there will be an entrepreneurial store there, running for 20, 30 years and say, make an India fan, $20 US, but for life. Lifetime warranty they give you on the spot. So you buy them, you take off, and then you fan. So my friend said, he was telling me a story, he said, fan, after a while the fan broke. And the fan just boom. And he said, hey, my God, something is wrong, we have to go down and check. So he put on his shirt, he went down to the store was still there, so he asked the boss, and the owner came and said, hey, sir, how you use your fan? He said, I take the fan back into my room. I just fan. He said, oh, sir, in India, we hold the fan, we go, yo, that's all. So when you have that kind of a story going around, I think you get very afraid of entering the Indian market. So that's what it is. Of course, today, India is definitely different. And we are very, very positive about India. We are very happy with our development in India, and we are going to invest very heavily in India. Today, we built one of the first green mark warehouse in the Chennai itself. So it's actually one of the first, or rather the first such a warehouse in Chennai. We are taking that through the rest of India. So I personally feel India as a very challenging but very, very high opportunity market. Right? So for our kind of business, the infrastructure bottlenecks that you see, all the lack of infrastructure, the transportation issues, actually provides a huge opportunity for us. If it's too perfect, actually it doesn't need people like us, really. So this is what I talk about, the first green district park. So we are also doing our part in terms of green. For all our new warehouses that we build are definitely green mark. I think we are ensuring that we also are investing in trucks. All our fleet of trucks are definitely also towards a green movement. It's very important for us as business leaders to be aware that this is a very long-term thing that we want to preserve, we want to create sustainability, not just by having all this green thing, but trying to do things that help to also bring green, right, into the environment, right? Like what we're trying to do in terms of a city supply chain. Because there are a lot of wastage, there are a lot of carbon wastage that is not necessary, right? By having a very efficient operation, by having lesser trucks. If we have not planned the entire way of a city supply chain fulfillment, they would probably use 2,000 trucks. We do it with 400 trucks. So there's a lot of efficiency that's being created in that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, ASEAN, which is very close to my heart. I think ASEAN is a very diverse economy. There are 10 ASEAN economies. So I currently still the co-chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. And one of the things about ASEAN is that because of the diversity, everybody thinks it's a disadvantage. But I tend to think that the diversity for ASEAN can be a strong advantage, because if they are able to work together, of course, right? That's on the premise of that. I think the ASEAN movement is going very strongly. We are very bullish. I just spoke in the last track on Indo-China about the potential of Vietnam, right, as China plus one. I think that's very strong in terms of that manufacturing is going to flow through, and how Vietnam is going to grow in the manufacturing value chain, and hopefully that can spill off the rest of ASEAN, right, in creating a kind of a push that by 2015 we will be one single production, one single market. It's already been the commitment, right, under the AEC or ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint. 2015 is the deadline, and by hook or by crook, I am pretty confident I think it will happen. Right. So this is how we see ASEAN and the huge opportunities in ASEAN. Obviously, we have also experiences like what Michael has gone through, right? But we are fortunate the way that we move in. I think there are certain policies, certain way that as a corporation, where you enter a country, just like you come to my house, you respect my house rules. When I visit you, I will respect your house rules. I think this is something that we have to learn and practice as an organization. In the interest of time, I think I've spoke quite a bit on that. I just want to talk about how, when we enter a place, whether it's China, India, or ASEAN, right? We feel that as a business, when we go in, if we take everything from the table, we try to leave everything on the table, we try to move and bring up really the level, right, of competency in our area of expertise, together with the partners so that we prosper together. I think that is the correct way to enter any business. Right? So we are very different from our competition. They will go in, they will end up probably acquiring the smaller companies. But we tend to go in, we work. In India itself, we have 35 partners with across the whole India. We have 53 cities distribution. And the whole idea about doing this is to bring up the level of logistics competency. We have built systems over the last decades, right? And we have actually used system processes and our expertise in driving world-class supply chain like for Dell computers and so on, which are literally world-class and the best in class, the best practice. And we try to bring that into those countries to get the local entrepreneurs, small SME companies that are very, very hardworking, very committed, honest, and they run. A lot of them are second generation, some even third generation. And these are the kind of businesses that we work with. While we look at that, we see that this is a way of moving, this is a way of growing. Right? How do you think we grow in India in 3 years to 50 over cities? It's mainly because of the partnership strategy policy that we have. Right? And we do this also in Indonesia. We have about 20 partners in Indonesia. When I say partners, I mean the last mile part of it. So we manage our systems, we invest in the huge infrastructure. But when we connect up to the last mile, because we have to bring goods out to the consumers, our customers, right? We have to be able to connect these last mile partners and bring it to the customers. This is what we do, and in the process, now we are moving forward one step further, even to work with the cities, right? Work with the government, because I think the goodness of whatever you do in business, there must always be a value that we bring to the table. And the value doesn't have to be totally economic. Of course, ultimately, you do well, you will make money. But the value of sharing, the value of bringing up the rest of our people, whether it is Indian, Chinese, ASEAN, doesn't matter. I think in those areas that we do, and we have fortunately set a very good record in doing that. So when we actually talk and engage with the local authorities, the government, and so on, that we do that. Right? So in India today, we are very proud to say we are the first company to be given what we call an importer of record for vendor managed inventory, right? Which India manufacturing is going to grow very fast. We are the first country ahead of all the competitors, including all the global companies that are given the license to be able to bring in 200 suppliers that fit Dell manufacturing, hold inventory on the behalf of the record. It's not possible at all. So we only started it months ago. Right? And then we are moving ahead with that for many other companies in terms of moving supply chain to fit manufacturing that can then deliver the product into rest of India. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. Just before I complete, I just want to show you really what CH, in case you will forget YCH again. In the younger days, yeah, Michael, in the younger days, people will take YCH. By the way, YCH really is my father's name, right? Yep. But we get known over time, younger days, we were known as young Chinese hunks. Right. But today, YCH stands as your competitor's headache. Right. So you partner us, we are your competitors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that very good presentation. I think we have time for a question. One question, according to George. So, who's the lucky person? Oh, somebody's already got the microphone, please.
Thank you, George. Very good organization and a very good presentation.
Thank you.
Very specific question. I was talking, I'm a Vikas Kumar, investment banker at Deutsche Bank. I was talking to someone very senior, Michael Dell's family office, and last year, he mentioned to me, very fantastic, he does not own anything. They have only Dell. They do not own patent, they do not own product, they do not have any investment team, they do not have any scientists working for them. You take their product, you sell them, FedEx delivers them to the home. All they have is nothing. Now tell me where we lack in terms of Asia. It's made in Asia, a lot of consumers are Asia now. You know, what's wrong with us? What they have, which we don't, or what they have, which you don't, when you produce and you give it to them. Thank you.
Yeah. This is what, that's why I think we have to sort of band together as Asian. I think this is the Asian century. This is our playground, right? So the fact that we are not where we are supposed to be is because we have not been thinking that way. I think it's very, very important for us to do. How many global brands are there here? I mean, compared to, yes. I think this is also one thing. And then when they think global. When we think much smaller. Even by marketing, I mean, to me, I always tell my guy, what's the difference between marketing and bullshitting? Close, very close. The only difference is that in the bullshitting, you just bullshit. In the marketing, you bullshit, but you deliver when they challenge you to that bullshit. And there's a big difference to that. So I mean, that's what it is, right? So we are definitely a much more humble, sometimes too humble to our disadvantage. We are a bit more shy. We don't speak as loud, right? This is a disadvantage because when they put you on a parade, all right, you look bad. Even though when you present your company, they present 200% of a company that is not what it is. So you lose out. I think this is where I think the major problem in terms of mindset in Asia that we must change. But you are right. Companies like us are actually managing the very critical link in the entire value chain, right? But of course, the people, that's why IP is very important. I mean, you see the way they're pushing it for IP, for control. Yeah. We have to respect that because then nobody will put in innovation. We don't do that, right? Everybody will still be by dozens swinging from tree to tree, right? So we have to be innovative, things new, and respect intellectual property. But that doesn't mean we ourselves cannot go and do something on our own, right? To promote Asian brand, to promote Asian entrepreneurship. The faster we do that, and this is the opportunity, because if you look at this global recession, it actually has tilted the scale somehow. So the opportunities for Asian companies are fantastic in this playground, which is why I consider myself fortunate to be really running and growing our business in Asia today. I think this is a huge advantage, and Asia is complex. It's not an easy place. So having played here and having understood and put a foundation in place, I think there's a huge future and huge potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. I think you touched on some very good points. I like the phrase you said that we suffered and learned, gained experience. I think many of us in the business world have been through that. But you developed as a result of this Pan-Asian solutions, which have clearly benefited your company. You told us a bit about China and India, and were reasonably positive on both of them. And that in ASEAN, you have found that diversity is a strength. And I think that certainly is the case. You suggested that we should act local, and in most cases have partners to prosper together. And finally, I think the sentence you used is a key one in any business, which is think the right way. Thank you very much indeed.